Not too long after his vicious betrayal of the Society and our abduction into the now-defunct Cinema Palace somewhere in that one flyover state, Verifier Andy personally tried to make up for his betrayal to me by arranging an interview with someone relevant to the conclave we just held, puppeteer extraordinaire Mike Quinn. Best known for his portrayal of Nien Nunb in that one movie about the return of a space wizard and his trusty laser sword, Mr. Quinn is better known to us in the Cinemania Society as the puppeteer who got the talking boil to do its thing and how to get ahead in advertising, which, as you'll hear, was a bit of a surprise to him. We're grateful to Mr. Quinn for his generosity, both of time and of spirit. Presented here for your listening pleasure is the complete and unedited interview with Mike Quinn. With special thanks to Gabe DeColida. Welcome. I want you to take a second to introduce yourself, please.
Me? Well, okay. Let's see. Well, I'm Mike Quinn. And let's see. I've been a puppeteer for something like 43 years now, hired by Jim Henson in the UK. And I've worked on all kinds of movies and TV shows and done some animation. And I'm still crazy enough to still be doing it, I guess. So that's me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so we took a quick look through your IMDb and your Wikipedia. And so it looks like you worked on a lot of really iconic films and franchises that began in the 80s and 90s, and you know the kind of movies that stick around in the memories of their viewers for decades. Really, what we might call really strong sources of Cinemania. The Muppets, Dark Crystal, Willow, whatever that one series was that everyone kind of forgot. I don't remember what it was called. It was the one with the space wizards and the laser swords and had like British RoboCop and Kraftwerk's vacuum cleaner. I have a vague memory of it being very Battlestar Galactica meets Harry Potter. I don't remember the title.
Sounds very manic. Well,
Something
IMDb,
like
though, you got to watch out because IMDb is known for being so inaccurate. And I've kind of almost given up on it now because I was always trying to correct it. And it's the most sort of awkward thing in the world. And then other people, I guess, keep coming in and adding credits that are wrong. So there's a bunch of stuff in there still that is wrong that I didn't do, and a bunch of things that I have put in that I did do that have been removed. So it's a bit weird. Though I think many years ago, maybe in the early IMDb days, they had me as appearing in Cat in a Hot Tin Roof with Cary Grant. And maybe I should have let that one in. I mean, you know, if
I would have kept that, definitely.
I should have kept that one. So it's not the best source of info for sure.
It's definitely the Hitchhiker's Guide of the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, or sorry, the Hitchhiker's Guide to Showbiz. You know.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it sort of has some truths in there at times, and it's so there's not one source on the interwebs that's completely accurate for what I've done yet, but I will change that soon.
Well, that's why we like. That's why I like to go straight to the source. What was your favorite movie to work on? Do you have a favorite movie?
Oh yeah, That's all, folks. Let's see. Hang on a minute. I had a meltdown there. So many favorite movies. It does. Sometimes it's the last thing that I worked on, just because it's sort of freshest in my memory, and I just enjoy hanging out with friends and just being on set, and it's fresh in my mind, really. So that's always exciting. So that sort of for a while becomes my favorite thing. But I suppose, I mean, I do get asked this a lot, and I think I sort of have to go back to my first love, as it were. When I very first started, I was a big Muppet fan, and so when Jim Henson hired me, suddenly I was working with my heroes and working these iconic Muppets and learning the trade on film. And, so the Great Muppet Caper was my first project. And I still, I think very fondly of them all, but of course that one is very special because it was my first. And, it launched me into everything else that I do now. So without that, nothing else could have happened. And it was just so magical. I mean, assisting Kermit and Ralph, helping out Jim and Frank, and doubling up for these main characters, and just learning on the job. There was no school at that time to learn that stuff. So you had to learn on the job, basically. Maybe that one, maybe the Great Muppet Caper.
Yeah, I mean, actually, my kids love that film. I have a 5-year-old and an 8-year-old. They love the Great Muppet Caper.
That's cool. Yeah.
But that's actually a good place. Why don't you since you were saying about IMDb being so inaccurate, can you give us just a quick thumbnail sketch of your career? Like, like you said, it's inaccurate. How do things look from your
Yeah, I
side?
mean, yeah, there's this. I mean, apart from the sort of the main movies that sort of, for the most part, are up there. There's been a lot of TV shows, series, a lot of pilots. I've directed a lot of things as well, that won't be up there, and pilots that don't get made into TV series, and pilots that do. So there's been a lot of that stuff. Yeah, a lot of commercials, some things I'm sure I've forgotten already. Plus, I have had my own puppet company. Dave Barkley and I, we were partners together in a business over here for about pretty much 10 years in the UK, where we built, built animatronics and puppets. And we made some things for other companies and pitched for some big shows. We pitched for Babe, the first Babe movie, and we pitched for rebuilding the Barney costumes as well. But otherwise, we did stuff for ourselves and produced our own shows as well with our own characters and that kind of thing. So for the UK, so that stuff I don't think is up there either. And of course, all the new stuff that I'm not.
Do you think you have any sort of pilots rattling around in your head that might have been, but never quite got there, that you'd still wish you could go back and revisit?
Oh gosh, there's loads. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, dozens. Yeah, I'll never run out of ideas and things.
Never quite let them go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And sometimes things just kind of come back around again. They have everything has its time. So yeah, there's a lot of things, especially recently, that have been kind of rattling around in the back and sort of hitting me from the inside and saying, "Hello, don't forget about me." So yeah. Which is exciting, because that's often a lot more personal to me. But the landscape's changed. Back in the day, you had to sort of pitch a pilot to a broadcaster or a network, and now it's that they're almost the minority now. There are so many other ways to get a show made, so it's great.
Yeah, it's the landscape is really different, really, really different. Even just like the past couple of years. Like I had a feature project that I had gotten greenlit to the tune of $4.5 million, somewhere around there. The budget came back at like, and basically we were getting ready to go, and then the pandemic hit, and all the funding dried up. Like all the, like everything was completely changed. We had to put everything on hold, and it just never quite came back together. And then like once the kind of dust settled and everybody started looking at like, okay, here's how things look, here's the new paradigm with the COVID controls, just the way things get pitched, who's distributing what. It's like things were beginning to move toward streaming as the dominant, distribution paradigm anymore. But like the pandemic really like supercharged that. Like nobody was going to theaters. So it's
and audiences, viewers are a lot more, I think, split now too. I mean, they've got a lot more places to go. So each channel, each company, each broadcaster, each streamer has probably less revenue than they would have had 10 years ago, and more, even 5 for that matter, I guess. So the money is being spread a little thinner now as well, perhaps.
Yeah, there's a screen in everybody's pocket, so everybody's competing for it's surprising. Like there's never been a more demand for visual media, and yet at the same time the money is that much harder to get.
Yeah. The good thing is, I mean, I think there is still a place for every kind of everything here for everyone. There's a place for this kind of stuff one-on-one, and there's also a place for the right from the small scale of home studios right up to big budget productions. There's still going to be a need for all those things and everything in between.
Oh yeah. Well, speaking of that, actually, I think this on that, like you kind of made a good point. This is something I was thinking about asking you, but this seems like a natural place to throw this in. Like you're really kind of uniquely positioned, I think, for visual, for visual storytellers, in that you came up when everything was analog, everything was practical, but you were there working as things were transitioning into the digital world, and you're still working as things are kind of coming into a hybrid. So I wonder if you might be able to tell us a little bit about like the transition from practical to digital, and then sort of back again, which you feel is most convincing to an audience, and then like what's your take on that?
Yeah, no, that's a really good question, and the answer's different sort of every 6 months, because of course it keeps changing. But I mean, I do remember back around it was the early to mid 80s, hearing that George wanted to replace film. It wasn't ready yet; it wasn't a thing, but he was looking to replace film, and that everyone was saying it'll never happen, it's a terrible idea, no. The traditional industry was kicking back from that a bit, but also at the same time,
was this George Miller?
George Lucas.
Sorry,
yes.
I've never heard of him.
Lucas.
I thought you were talking about George Miller. He was the guy who did Babe, right? He also did the Mad Max movie. I could have sworn the same.
I think George Miller was he still in college then? I don't know. Maybe was he making films then?
Yeah,
in the early 80s, he was. Okay.
Yeah, George Miller. He's the guy who did Mad Max.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Before that, he was an ER doc. He worked. He was an emergency medicine doctor.
There you go. Okay, so it's that George Miller. Oh, no, yeah. I'm glad we cleared that up.
Okay, just making sure. I wanted to make sure when you said George.
Yeah. One of the Georges anyway. There's not too many Georges making movies now. I guess they're out of fashion, aren't they?
Yeah. No, sorry. I was. But do carry on, please. You were telling us that.
I remember we were on the we were building puppets for the Dark Crystal. So this would be the back end of 1980, maybe early 81. And I remember at that time hearing about Jim Henson wanting to use digital puppetry. So in other words, what we'd now know as motion capture puppetry, where a puppeteer could puppeteer a CG character in real time. And he finally got to do that, I think, in was it 1986 for Waldo, the little flying character that was in the Jim Henson Hour and can now still be seen in the Muppet 3D movie in Florida, in Disney in Florida. So these visionaries were always looking ahead to seeing what could be done and that we're not doing yet. Technology is always going to be coming at us whether we like it or not, and the same goes for AI for that matter. I mean, it's just yet another new thing that people are going to both fear, hate, and love, and welcome in, and utilize, and use badly and use well. So yeah, I saw basically everything go from film to digital. Now I saw Toy Story. And of course, that was the first, 3D full-length animated film. And it was groundbreaking because it had engaging characters and story and was very well done. So I sort of saw this in a way as doing for modern day animation what Jim Henson did to puppetry. So I was really interested in how could I use animation as another way to bring things to life. So I made it my business to get recruited by Pixar and got to then fly over to San Francisco and work on Toy Story 2 and A Bug's Life. Now, I think A Bug's Life, that was the one that was the first all digital film from start to finish to projection. I believe it was the first ever for at least for a feature film. I think it was Bug's Life. So that was kind of a landmark thing right there. And then, of course, for a while, the industry had moved over to fully digital, and film was never used again. But then, when we were working on the last trilogy, Star Wars trilogy, of course, JJ brought film back, and they had to make some new film stock, and they made new lenses for the cameras and that kind of thing. So that was quite neat. Although they were using some digital cameras for certain low light, and I think maybe certain effect shots. So it wasn't 100% shot on film.
There's been a few films recently. That film Malk that Netflix put out where David Fincher actually used an incredible suite of digital effects to add in the film grain of sort of 1940s and 1950s lens-based effects and make it look like they weren't using digital cameras. And we've reached the point where we're using digital now to simulate the idea that maybe we're not using digital, and we've gone back in a weird way.
Yeah, adding that bloom and those sort of those artifacts that natural chemicals light
lovely
on
the texture that you get, the real grittiness.
And it's great because it removes it from reality. You know, that's why we generally gravitate towards 24 frames per second instead of like 60, right? Because it's just less real. I don't know. And I don't know what that is. Our brain does something different. We're slightly more removed from it, and it's a little bit more magical and not, it's imperceivable, but that sort of that flicker is there, and there's just something about that look that I think still has yet to be improved upon. So yeah.
I've always been more of a fan of practical effects than I have been of digital effects, like in a movie, because when you have something concrete that you're getting a good performance out of, that the actor can interact with, as opposed to a tennis ball on a stick with a photocopy of what the character is supposed to look like taped to the C-stand. I like it seems to me like just like with everything else, like people are saying, like the best chess players, like once the computer chess got to be so it can beat any human, it was a human working in concert with a computer that would get, that would be able to beat the best computer chess player. Like it was a human intervention. Just like with that, it seems like the most convincing effects these days are practical effects that get digital enhancement. What do you think?
Yeah, I've definitely seen the practical stuff never ever completely went away. A lot of people, when I do signings at shows, a lot of people sort of tell me, they talk to me as though puppets are a thing of the past now and everything's digital. And they're always quite shocked when I say, actually, no, everything we're doing now is all fully practical. All the puppets are all in camera. There's not even I'd say for 99.9% of everything, there's not even any CG enhancement on anything that we're doing.
Wow.
Now is we've got that good with it all as well, and again, the smart producers and directors know that the audience would rather see something practical. I remember when we were doing Little Shop of Horrors, and that was in 1986. And we knew that CG was being talked about and it was coming and that it was on its way. There were early things, and there were like dozens and dozens of us pushing this heavy rubber around on these giant cables on sticks to try and to make it to talk, and we rehearsed for months on that thing, and we'd built up these big sort of neck muscles from doing all this stuff for months and months. It was kind of painful though. I mean, I ended up hurting myself a little bit for a while near the end of the film on the big giant plant. But I remember I was thinking, when are they going to invent CG? Because this is ridiculous. Why are we doing this the hard way? We can just do it all on computers. And of course, that became true with Jabba the Hutt, and ultimately everyone just loved the practical rubber Jabba the best in the end. And he could hardly do anything really. He couldn't move that much, and he couldn't do very much, but he was real.
Once you've seen him, you don't forget him.
Yeah, it's just he was there, and you just can't beat that. There are some things that you just cannot do, practically. Obviously, certain things that are certain, if they're just too big or too small or too fast or too weird, too things that just go against physics, I guess, or that are too dangerous to do. Then by all means, we can do things. I mean, they've done things in the past where they've changed dialogue and had to redo lip sync on mouths in post just because they've had to, but they've shot stuff so that kind of thing happens. But I'm seeing more and more now, like in the last bunch of Star Wars movies, there's been very little green screen. People assume that there's a lot, but there's hardly anything, and it's kind of used just more for set extensions and things like that than anything. They tend to build everything for real and use hundreds of supporting actors and things like that. So very little digital crowds as well. It's great, and I think, I think creators are starting to realize what is possible now with practical, and even for stunts as well. That's another element that we bump up against sometimes and run into, and they've kind of gone back to more practical stunt work as well. So it's really good. I think it's just a growing up and maturing, really.
Yeah. Integrating the new tool. It's kind of like when you have a kid and you give them the new toy. That's all they want to play with for a few weeks. And then it gets integrated into the overall system of play that they have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It sounds like you do a range of things, it sounds like, do you design and then also sometimes execute people's artistic vision or collaborate with the writers or directors? It sounds like those are all the things that you do. What do you prefer to do if someone were to give you your druthers?
I do like performing. I like it when I get to really act with something good. I like to chew on some stuff. I like to be in front of the camera, so that's always good. But I also like the creation phase too. So I love a blank sheet of paper and a pencil, because anything is possible at that point. So creating an idea, creating a character, creating a world, and getting to direct that and bake that cake with all those raw elements, I think is also exciting. So they're all different parts of the brain, and I think it's really good to push oneself to do as many different things as possible, to keep things fresh, for sure.
So are you the one who is responsible for designing the boil on how to get ahead in advertising?
Oh yeah, the boil.
The boil in how to get ahead in advertising. It's not a film that everybody knows. No, I'm not responsible for designing it. They brought me in to perform it. But British film, Handmade Films, George Harrison's film company, and what was his name? Bruce Robinson, I think, was the director and writer. Who had a great success with Nail and Die. So small, low budget, independent British films, but it did very well. So How to Get Ahead was the next one for those guys. I believe Bruce actually voiced the boil, although he didn't get credit.
He did.
I think that was his voice on that. Hiya, handsome.
Yeah.
Was it his idea to give it the mustache, or was that yours?
I suspect it was probably his. Being the director and the visionary, I imagine so. And also that was to just, I guess, distinguish him from Richard E. Grant's character as well, I would imagine. So
we were watching the film, and when we were all talking about the film and everything, and sort of digging into what does it mean, what does this represent, and I think it was me who was saying, well, the mustache. This is clearly a class thing. This is a comment on class mobility in the 80s, and everyone thought I was very clever about that. So I think that's why the mustache was there, clearly.
I mean, a mobile phone and a pager,
and all that.
There was definitely I think that was a big part of it for sure. I think there was the script originally had a different ending as well. Where I think, how about that? See, you learned something new. And I think the original ending was the world ended up blowing up, basically. It got nuked or something, and that was the end of the world. That was the end of the movie. So they didn't do that in the end, but that was one option that they had. So
instead they went out on Jerusalem and Holst, and with him on that hill. But speaking, like bring it back to kind of your realm. So like that's the movie that we recently held our conclave on, which is when we get our society together and analyze and scrutinize films.
Excellent.
For their potential to cause cinemania.
Absolutely, yes. It's getting worse, isn't it, cinemania? Don't you think?
Yeah, it is
every day.
Yeah. It's but speaking of how to get ahead in advertising, you've got a very muscular and athletic performance from Richard E. Grant. A lot of yelling, a lot of jumping, a lot of running around, a lot of really intense, like neck cords standing out. Do you recall any problems or hiccups with all the prosthetics and puppetry going on him?
No, actually, but strangely, everything went really well. I mean, Richard himself, of course, was I think he loved it. He really took it on board and worked with us very nicely. So now he again, something you may not know, but Richard E. Grant started out as a puppeteer.
I did not know that.
Yeah, he told me himself. That's how he became an actor. So when he was a kid in, I think it was South Africa, growing up, he would put on puppet shows and charge his friends money to see the shows, and that's how he actually got into acting.
That's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah, so there we go. So I mean, for the most part, I think at one point, one of the wells collapsed or snapped on the controls in mid take when he was in the bathroom looking in the mirror. But other than that, everything went fine. So 86, everything was still all cable controlled. So we weren't doing really any radio control stuff or anything like that. So we were definitely tethered to him for sure.
That must have been a real experience.
It was all right though. To this day, though, I still have a problem with ketchup and fish fingers because he was in the hospital bed, and remember he was stuffing his face.
Scene, just gobbling them down.
So I was under the bed. There was a hole in the I think near the pillow where the boil starts to grow and push up. When the nurse has left, so I was under there operating that, and of course, unfortunately, under the bed was his spit bucket. So you can imagine after half a day of all the different angles and takes, I was just getting so nauseated with the smell of this thing, and to this day I still have a problem with that. But that's a hazard of doing what we do, right?
Yeah, no, those are the things I love. I love the production stories, from various different people. Like, like it seems like every movie you work on, you come away with some fun, weird story. I'll have to tell some. This is not fit for an audience, but at some point I'll have to tell people the kangaroo story. What happened with a live kangaroo on a set?
Oh boy,
yeah, that was. Yep, awkward teenage kangaroo being an awkward teenage kangaroo. I'll let you can fill in the rest, but
I already did.
But I love those are the stories that like people don't get to see. I mean, especially even if it's a movie that's as loopy as How to Get Ahead in Advertising, which is a loopy movie. Like you watch it and you just like feel like I don't know, like it feels like you've done too much of the wrong kinds of substances. And
well, yeah, those guys probably did. Yeah, I was too young and innocent, of course. That was 1987, I think we filmed that.
Yeah,
I believe at Shepperton Studios, I think.
That no, I wasn't implying that you were, but I mean when one feels that way, when like this is what I mean about the film being a source of cinemania, you come away with it feeling as if you had one of the symptoms is you come away feeling as if you've done a variety of substances, but hearing the stories that the audiences can't possibly know, that only people who work on the set can have, fun stories. Do you have other stories you would from other experiences that you're like, oh, here's a fun one?
I probably do. But it will be here all day. And
yeah, good point.
And it's funny though. Sometimes I remember things that I hadn't thought about in 20 or 30 years, and they just pop into your head. It's like, oh yeah, something will trigger that, and that part of your memory will open up. It's kind of cool. So there's just so much though. I mean, main thing is to you have to sort of be professional when you're on set, but inside you can still be that kid saying, wow, this is so amazing. This is so fun. This is so great. It's so magical. And never boring. That's the thing. Every day on set is so different to the one before.
Yes.
So yeah, I love that.
It is never boring. It is definitely that. It is not boring. Frustrating, exhausting, cold, tiring, but never boring.
No, that's right.
Did you do any other stuff with Handmade Films, or was this the only one you did?
That was the only thing. My buddy Mike Edmonds, of course, had done Time Bandits. He was one of the Time Bandits. So he was a lot closer, I think, to those guys than I was. I remember when we were rehearsing the Boyle puppet, Ray Cooper came by, And of course, he was one of the producers for Handmaiden for the films, and he was the percussionist for so many of the George Harrison's tracks, and I assume the Traveling Wilburys, and I don't know what else. So yeah, I don't know if you know who Ray Cooper is, but he's a very well known musician. So he was also part of Handmaid, so I got to meet him just the one time, but very talented guy. But I didn't really see George. Yeah, so you can look him up. I didn't
speaking of Georges.
really see George though. Yeah, that's right. Another George filmmaker. That's 3 now. Okay, we're going for the hat trick.
Yeah,
George Harrison. He used to be a Beatle. Yes, not the insect, but of the group. Yeah, Beatlemania, different to Cinemania.
Oh yes.
That's a whole other podcast. We don't talk to them.
Yeah,
it's another bunch of guys.
Yeah.
I thought that was Beatlemania.
In a cabin somewhere. Yeah, meaning, yeah, there you go. So I didn't really see George during the stuff we were doing necessarily, but I did get to meet him. He had an office in, I think it was in Neal's Yard in London, and it was just this little tiny windy place on a 5th floor. So I got to meet him and shake his hand then in his office, basically, which was kind of cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Yeah, he was nice though. Yeah, absolutely. Smart guy, very creative, very nice, and more power to him for having a film company. I think that was just a hobby, a love of his, I would imagine.
Yeah, the story. If you haven't ever read it, there's a great book out called "Very Naughty Boys," the story of handmade films, and it kind of goes into its foundation.
Really?
Yeah, the whole thing. We talked about this on our show, but apparently, how handmade films came about was because EMI had greenlit The Life of Brian, but they hadn't read the script. They were in pre-production. They had actually gone to Tunisia, were building sets in Tunisia when somebody in EMI read the script, and they're like, "Oh no, we can't have this. No." Yeah. And they called him up and they said, "Sorry, you're plumb out of luck." And Eric Idle, who had met George Harrison when they shared a joint in the projection room over a screening of Monty Python, The Holy Grail, Dennis O'Brien, he got together with Dennis O'Brien, and they did an emergency flight out to LA to George Harrison's flat in LA. And he just happened to be having a party, and they got together and they said, "Hey, George, EMI just boned us. We're left hanging. We've got sets that are half built. We're trying to make this movie called The Life of Brian." And he gave him the pitch, and George's like, "Yeah, I got you." And he said, "How much do you need?" And he told him, and I think it was something on the order of I don't think it was 40 million. It may have been like 4.5 million or something like that. But basically the full budget. And he's like, "Yeah, I got you, no problem." Mm-hmm. And that's how handmade film got started.
Very good, very good. Well, I love Time Bandits, so it's a great classic.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. As a kid, Time Bandits for me was one of my favorite films.
So good,
but along with The Dark Crystal, actually, as well.
Oh wow!
I remember. Well, I saw The Dark Crystal. I was probably a bit too young for it.
Oh yeah,
I remember seeing it on TV, and I remember I didn't really believe what I'd seen. I thought that I'd dreamed it later.
Wow!
So I was thinking,
I was a bit too young for it too, and I worked on it.
Especially that whole vital essence bit that had to have been a bit scarring for a young person.
Perhaps, hopefully, yeah, that was the best part. Yeah,
but
that was good. Yeah, the special effects puddling that they had these vacuum tubes rigged into it and everything. It was great.
Oh, that was terrifing.
Oh,
absolutely.
Yeah, excellent, excellent.
Yeah. Speaking of moments of Cinemania that live on and forever,
rot our brains. Yeah. So that's the thing. Cinemania, right? I mean, when we absorb what we see on screen, I think it does change our brain, right? Isn't that what Cinemania is?
It is, yeah. There comes a point where you forget you're watching a film and sitting in a chair, and for a few moments, sometimes you're there, and it all just washes over you, and does. But
not only that, but after you've left, you're never quite the same again.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this is why it's important to scrutinize and try to find a way to sequester these films from the public.
Yeah, we're going to stop all of that. We're going to put all of that to one side, make sure it never happens again.
Yes,
protects the public.
Yeah, some films maybe more than others, but anyway, yes.
Well, is there? Let's see. I know we're running thin on time here, but
no, I'm sure. No, Keep going, keep going.
Okay, let's see here. Then we were bringing it back to a little bit about Handmade. He said one of the things that I thought was pretty funny is Eric Idle described George Harrison as the only morally good person whom rock and roll has ever produced. What's your take on that, having met the guy?
I'm sure he's right. I'm not qualified to comment, but he would know better than I, I'm sure. Yeah.
Well, it seems
I've worked with a lot of musicians, and for the most part, they're all actually really cool people. And sometimes, they might show up late. It seems to be a musician thing. They're always late for stuff, late for the shoot and whatever, but not always. But no, I love it. Yeah, they're very, very creative. Slightly different breed to actors.
Yeah, I can see that. It just seems like it seems particularly like with a movie like How to Get Ahead in Advertising, it feels George Harrison-y to me. Like the message of the film feels like something that he was on board with. Especially the time that it came out, the critique of 80s consumerism and shit capitalism. Like it was very much like while the rest of us were being distracted with the movies like, I don't know, Predator or Total Recall or whatever current action fare was, like there's this little movie that came out that was really thumbing its nose at all of this, saying, hey folks, don't fall asleep watching these movies. This one, we want to try to keep you awake for this.
Yeah, so with Cinemania in mind, would you recommend people at least see How to Get Ahead so that they know how dangerous it could be?
Absolutely.
Well,
yes.
we make it our business to warn people that they're in grave danger of having their minds open to potentially dangerous ideas if they watch these films. And they should definitely be aware of that fact and be fully aware that these films could lead to all sorts of strange thoughts and interesting experiences.
Yeah, most definitely. I think most people probably listening to this now, and almost every person that I know has not even seen that film. So
well, you can thank Andy. This is the first time I'd seen it when we convened our conclave on it, and Andy submitted this as his choice.
I remember, again, as a kid, it came on Channel 4 back when Channel 4 used to really make a point of emphasizing that kind of film, like weird, odd little films, and putting them on. I used to love it. I was fixed to Channel 4. And I have this vague memory. Wasn't there this film with like a talking boil thing? And I went back and I thought, we have to look at this one again. Coming back to it as an adult, it hit me in a very different way. As a kid, I just thought this is hilarious. He's grown a boil and it's talking, but now it's like, oh, this is a warning. There's real danger in the world, and this is talking about it.
Yeah, and of course, Richard got to work on the last Star Wars film as well. So we've reconnected online a few times and had a laugh about back then. He's always been very nice. So.
I had a question. What is a Star War?
A Star War. It's a war in the stars, or a war. It could be a war involving stars. Sort of a
cosmic conflict,
cosmic conflicts,
or a solar struggle. Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to have to get familiar with this. This is
cosmic conflicts. Yeah, I like the sound of that.
Something. Yeah.
The pilot for you to try out.
That's actually a title of a Christian science fiction movie I worked on in 2008. Goodness. And it was
science Christian.
Yeah, it was as much fun as it sounds like. That was the one that had the kangaroo story came from that movie.
The kangaroo. Okay, that makes sense then. Yeah.
But so I had seen Withnell and I a number of times. It's actually one of my father's favorite movies. And, so I watched that a bunch as a teenager. So I didn't even know they had this other one that was basically, you might even say like a partner piece to Withnell and I.
Yeah. I think so. Yeah.
But let's see here. I think
there's some more questions. Yeah.
I had more questions, but they were all kind of like whether we would not say get around to it, but like, I don't need to necessarily ask all of them. I just kind of threw everything against the wall and wanted to see like where the conversation would lead. And But yeah, ultimately, actually, I had two other ones to ask before we
Okay.
roll out of here. One of which is we know you worked on a number of really iconic films. We've kind of established that. What's one you didn't work on that you like to watch? You're like, man, I really wish I'd worked on that.
Are you talking about from the time period from when I started working in the biz, or can I go back to any time ever?
Oh, anytime, any era you like.
Let's see. I mean, from when I began making films, if there was one film I could have had something to do with, I would have loved to have been a part of. At least looking back now, would be Back to the Future. That would have been a cool. I got to work with Bob Zemeckis, of course, and his camera guys and lighting people and everything on Roger Rabbit, and so that was made just before Back to the Future 2 and 3. So I sort of almost bumped into that whole stuff, but that would have been a cool one to have worked on. To go back further, I would say it would have been, if I had a magic lamp, it would have been great to have worked on a Hitchcock film, and then to go back even further to be in a Laurel and Hardy short, I think would have been pretty cool back in maybe the 30s, So yeah, so there's a few there.
Well, that's certainly a fine mess you've gotten yourself into.
It certainly is.
What is a film that you feel like is, in your opinion, the best example, one of the best examples of your particular profession? It's just the sort of like the chef's kiss of effects. Like a.
You mean like puppet animatronic effect stuff?
Yeah, whether it's whether it's digitally enhanced or not, but whether it's just puppetry animatronics, just a thing that you're like, you watch this and you're like, this is the thing, this is why I do what I do, even if it's if it's something you might have done, or if it's something that you've seen that you're like, you keep coming back to, that is just for you your iconic example of your trade.
Hang on, my laptop's about to. It's not plugged in. Hang on one sec. Hold it right there.
All right.
Okay.
My laptop's not.
Sorry, we don't edit anything. Editing is impossible for an audio medium.
I think that it's totally impossible. There, I think we're back. I didn't want us to get. There we are. All right. I don't want to get cut it off there. So let's see. That was a good way of avoiding the question, wasn't it?
There was a question. I didn't. Oh,
there was a question. That's a tough one. I mean, let's see. I probably haven't seen everything that's out there. I would say there's some stuff that I really enjoyed doing that I think was what I'm hoping will have raised the bar a little bit in terms of animatronics. That's not out yet. So we're going to have to wait until either 24 or 25. I'm not sure yet.
Okay.
But there's something that was pushed me particularly hard, and we're hoping. I think I haven't seen the finished thing, but I think it might take things to just maybe on a very subtle level, but definitely to another level that I have maybe not been able to do before.
Okay.
So, but I can't really say what that is.
Okay. But cryptic plug. We'll keep our eyes peeled for that. But so it's something people can go and find on a shelf. A VHS tape they could grab somewhere, or it doesn't have to VHS. It could be obviously streaming. But like, what's something that somebody could go see that you're like, for Mike today to look at a movie and be like, this is awesome. This is this is my shining. I don't know if it's a shining achievement, but like this is the thing that stands out in my mind when I think about puppetry and animatronics. This is the thing.
Yeah, there's a bunch of things. I mean, I would say only because they've sort of come back around again. I think Jim would have been very pleased if he were alive. Things like the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. They're just very unique. The Dark Crystal was the very first animatronic all puppet film ever. So that was the first. And then just 4 years later, he made Labyrinth sort of as an antidote to that, which then had sort of humor and humans and music in there. So to try and make that a little more successful and accessible. There were some great things in there, puppet-wise, that in both those films that I think are definitely pinnacles of good animatronic puppetry. And what else?
Well,
and then,
I mean, you have the puppets interacting with humans as well in Labyrinth in ways that I hadn't seen before, certainly.
Yeah, there's
It's
one.
seeing a
Uh,
puppet interacting with a puppet is one thing, but then it's like, well, that's an actual person, and
Yeah, no,
interacting one to
it's
one with it.
magical. Yeah, and if
Yeah.
the thing is, if the puppet's doing its job correctly, or the character is doing its
Mm.
job correctly, or the performer, then the actor that's with them will always totally buy into the puppet and ignore the puppeteer
Mm.
below. It happens almost every single time. They completely forget that there's a human underneath. Um, yeah, and even things like that, again, something that's kind of come back around again has been the Muppet Christmas Carol.
Oh
Mm.
yeah,
And that's sort of become like a classic now. Who knew, right? It was a hard one because it was the first big thing we did after Jim's passing.
yeah.
Was it like 92 or something? I was a puppet coordinator on that, as well as a puppeteer, and I'm singing on the soundtrack and everything as well.
Oh wow.
Oh man.
So yeah, and it's just it's nice because it sort of comes back around every year, and it'll find new audiences, and it's become sort of a favorite. So it's hard to ignore that one as well, in terms of just pure puppetry, not animatronics or anything. It's just pure puppetry,
Oh
and
yeah.
it's pure joy.
Yeah, my girls
Yeah,
love that one too. That's their favorite take on A Christmas Carol.
amazing. Yeah,
Who directed that one? Do you recall?
that was Brian Henson. So
Okay.
yeah, that was Brian's first film.
Okay.
He'd done TV stuff before, and Jim had been sort of grooming him, at least as far as I know, since Mother Goose stories that we made in the early '80s for Disney Channel.
I was trying to remember if it was it was Muppet Treasure Island who had Kirk Thatcher directing.
Let's see who directed that. Oh, no, that wasn't Kirk. Did Muppet Wizard of Oz? I think Brian did Treasure Island. Actually, yeah,
Really?
that was
Oh,
Brian.
okay, I have to go back.
I
Anyway,
don't
Kirk.
Yeah, IMDb. Forget that. So yeah,
Yeah.
Kirk did Muppets Wizard of Oz.
Okay. Yeah. He's a buddy of mine. He was actually on he was attached to direct the feature that I had that the money fell through.
Okay, that might have been it. Maybe at one point he was going to be doing it. Yeah. Kirk's great. Kirk's done loads of stuff, and has again we bumped into each other. I guess since I first met Kirk on the Jim Henson Hour on the pilot in Toronto, so that would be like 86, I think, 1986. But he also was involved in Nien Nunb, my Star Wars character, back at ILM. So he was part of making the mold and doing film tests on it and stuff like that back in 80. What would that be? 81, 82. Yeah. So again, we go back sort of 40 years.
Goodness, that is a ways. Yeah, he's a he's a decent sort. I've hung out with him a couple times.
Well,
I'd like to get to know him better.
Tiki drink is all right with me. good rum mix. Yep.
Well, yeah. If you find yourself out here this way, we'll have to get you your best Mai Tai I've ever had. If you like tropical drinks, next time you're out in this part of the neck of the woods, I will get you to a place that will
Thank you. I love an old school traditional Mai Tai. It doesn't have pineapple juice or anything like that. So it goes invented in the 1940s. So those are the ones to have. I actually make them myself too here in my kitchen. So. Well, not all the time, not for breakfast or anything. Honestly, just
wouldn't judge you if you did.
Really.
But
so yeah, that's good stuff. Kirk's great though. So yeah.
Okay. Well, I don't know, Andy. Do you have other questions, or should we let this man get on with his day?
I think we'll have to let him go. I could go on about the Dark Crystal for a while, actually. Just thinking back, I'm going back in my mind to it, but I'm not going to. But that's the one for me that really sticks out. I have to say, it's I've not thought about it in a while, and as soon as you mentioned it, immediately I'm back in that room watching the telly, just thinking,
I was pleased that when I saw the Blu-ray, because I thought it just looked so good. It had so much detail and color accuracy. It was kind of like being back on set again. It's quite nostalgic, really. So yeah, and plus back then they used to make documentaries properly, where you'd have a whole hour long of behind the scenes, and they would actually tell you how they made things properly, not just like 2-minute little puff pieces and stuff. So.
Oh yeah, and sometimes they'd bring the puppets onto Blue Peter or something, and I remember there are a few times they would do that. They'd say, "Oh, there's a film coming out, children, and here we're going to talk about some of the things you're going to see." And they'd have like,
Did you see the Dark Crystal Blue Peter thing? I did that as well.
"Oh,
I don't know if you saw that. Yeah, we did a. I was the Skeksis with Peter. Was it Peter Duncan, the guy that was the actor? And then Fizzgig was on Sarah Green's knee or behind her shoulder or something. So I did Fizzgig as well on Blue Peter live television. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure I would have been watching."
and Russell Harty. Did you ever see the Russell Harty show where Jim Henson, Frank Oz were on that, and I was performing a Skeksis on that too? Again, live TV. Terrifying, absolutely.
Again, yeah. This is about 4 p.m. You can't be showing Skeksis to children at 4 p.m. That's just
it's way too Skeksy for them. Thank you.
Well played, sir. Well played. What do you think about the Dark Crystal? Very briefly, what do you think about the Dark Crystal Age of Resistance?
Let's see. Well, what do I think about it? I think a lot of things about it. A lot of my friends worked on that. And I was actually kind of next door working on the Rise of Skywalker right around the same time. So I'd run into some of my mates, in the high street and things like that. I would have liked to have worked on it, but I didn't get the chance. Unfortunately, it didn't. I mean, I know they had a second series kind of outlined, and I've spoken to a lot of people recently that have told me they really, really, really wished it had gone to season 2. But I imagine it was a viewer numbers versus budget issue, I suppose. Yeah. Maybe it cost too much compared to how many viewers they got. So with hindsight, perhaps if they'd simplified it a little bit, kept the cost down a bit, perhaps they could have made a season 2. There was a lot going on in a lot of characters, a lot of puppets in that show, and I don't know if that was why it might have cost too much to have made a second series. I'm not really sure. So,
I liked it, but for me, it was kind of like eating an entire family-sized Christmas pudding at a sitting. Like, it was really, really good, but it's also really rich,
Yeah. I mean, I think there were some parts where I thought were more accessible to younger viewers, and then there were some parts that were a bit kind of scary with the whole eyeball thing that might have been a bit for older. So I was like, okay, who is this for? I wasn't completely sure who the audience was for it. Yeah, but that's just me, what do I know?
Well, before we turn you loose, do you have anything you want to plug?
Want to plug? Let's see. Hang on. Beginning of the year, I've got my own new website that I'm opening up. That goes back to what I said earlier about there's no one place on the internet that has everything that's correct about me. So I'm creating that myself, and that is called the Quinn Zone. And currently, let's see. Well, people have been able to. There's a QR code, but that doesn't really work on audio, does it? Where people can sign up and get notifications of when the site opens up for real, and they can get a little chapter of I wrote a little book called Mike Quinn's Magic Moments, and each chapter has a magic moment. One being when I first started working for Jim, and different high points in my life, my career. So that I'm expecting January for that to be open. The Quinn Zone anyway, and people can find me on my sort of social medias and stuff. But I want to put on there all the things that I can't put up elsewhere on YouTube or on Facebook. And this is a platform that I own, and I'll be doing live streams from there, and just putting up a lot of archive material that no one has ever seen before and won't see elsewhere either. So I think that's kind of exciting.
Oh, well,
fantastic.
We'll put up links and things. We can when we release this, put it on our website. We'll definitely have to plug all of that and have a look.
Oh, I do appreciate that. Oh, look at that. A thumb went out when I did that.
Fantastic. Yeah, we'll like I said, we'll plug all that across our own social media, and when we do release our profile on Cinemania on you, we'll send that your way so you can hear it.
I hope I'm not too cinemanic. Is there a cure for this stuff? Is there?
No.
What do we do with it?
There's no cure. You get thrown into the deepest, darkest hole we can find, and we clang shut the door and make sure that nobody ever finds you again.
Well, that's like every day in my puppetry career. How is that any different?
Well, the
You know?
difference is that
Natural-
it's
natural
the
justice.
the missile silo that the video store is built over is this abandoned missile silo.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. And then there might be some cannibalistic humanoid underground people, mutant people. That's right, cannibalistic.
Yeah, a lot of
humanoid underground mutant
subterranean
people.
things going on. Well, that's I think where filmmakers come from in the first place, isn't it?
Yeah,
And
they're all a bunch of
puppeteers.
chumps.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Right. See,
who knows what's ahead, right? I mean, it's so hard to predict the future right now. We're sort of, I think, we're in the middle of so much change so quickly in this industry.
yeah, it's yes. We can. That's another thing we could analyze to death is where things where things have been and where things are going and how things are changing. But
I've heard it said that past is prologue. Who can say?
I'm going to throw something at you. Well, thank you very much, Mike. We really appreciate your time and your generosity with it. And
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Ethan and Andy. Good to meet you. And I'll see you in person before too long, I hope, as well. But thank you so much for listening to me ramble on.
Us too. Have a good evening, and we'll catch up with you the next time we see you.
Awesome. Take care now. Thanks a lot.
Been a
Bye.
pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. That episode of the Cinemania Society was written and performed by Andy Slack, Daniel Scribner, Andrea Palladino, Alessa Luz Martinez, Hope Bravo, Ethan Ireland, and Zachariah Burks. Music by Carl Casey at White Bat Audio. Incidental music and sound effects courtesy of Epidemic Sound. Visit our social media feeds on Facebook, Twitter, X, at TCS_Cinemania, and Reddit at r/the Cinemania Society. If you really like what you've heard, visit us on Patreon and chuck us a couple bones, because making podcasts ain't free. The Cinemania Society is a product of the Cinemania Society, LLC.